Thank you, Dr. Bob. Next question. Was early mankind as intelligent and innovative as modern man?
One of my books is called Brilliant, Made in the Image of God. I document ancient cultures and their abilities. And let me give you a few examples. Well, let me first put it in a bigger perspective. If mankind came from something that wasn't mankind, it must have been something that was more monkey-like, ape-like, whatever, which means we must have slowly and gradually developed our abilities, intelligence, innovativeness, and technology. But if the Bible's true, we were made very intelligent from the very beginning. If you look at the cultures of the world that developed immediately after the worldwide flood, they were absolutely brilliant. The Great Pyramid of Giza was aligned within 0.03% of north-south, placed exactly 1/3 of the way from the equator to the North Pole of the prime meridian. That's a specific astronomical position. To do that, they had to know the diameter of the Earth and that the Earth was round. When we built the Greenwich Observatory in the 1800s, we tried to align it perfectly north-south. We achieved within 0.06% of a degree. 4,000 years earlier, mankind was 3 times more accurate. And it is astounding what they were able to accomplish. It's believed that pyramid was built in about 20 years. If you look at the number of blocks of limestone, enormous blocks, 12 foot by 8 foot by 6 foot blocks of limestone, they're cut to such precision that when you stack them, they have to stay completely level or the pyramid will start to tilt. It does not. You'd have to cut and place a 20,000-pound stone every 5 minutes, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year for 20 years to build that pyramid. And yet that's what they did. I don't think modern man could achieve such a technological feat. Stupid, ignorant, ancient man. One last example. People hear about Neanderthal man like they were some sort of an ancient, brutish ape creature. They weren't. They were highly intelligent people living during the Ice Age. The Ice Age would be absolutely guaranteed as a consequence of the worldwide flood. Massive land movement, massive volcanism, a restructuring of the entire Earth would have poured billions of BTUs into the oceans of this Earth, causing mass extinction. What do we find? Mass extinction and dead animals trapped in sediment worldwide as a result of the flood. But the oceans everywhere would have been much warmer at the end of the flood. Weather is driven by water temperature. Warmer water, more evaporation, where does it go? It condenses, comes down to snow at the polar caps. So for hundreds of years after the flood, there would have been an ice age. People were spreading out across the globe after the flood. Those who look different than others, probably people like Neanderthals, would have been pushed to the outskirts of society. They were living in Germany, where ice is building up. Where do they find shelter? In caves. Were they stupid, ignorant people? You can look up a report, and this came out about 5 years ago, where the newspaper said, Neanderthals have invented super glue. This is what they found out. These men, these highly intelligent human beings, discovered by taking birch bark or something that's a very high oil resin, heating it in the absence of oxygen, maybe burying it under rocks and heating it with fires above, holding it to a very precise temperature, were able to cross-link it in such a way they could smear it on their spearheads, and it would ooze into both the stone pores and the wood pores and hold their spearheads to those spears. So strong the spear would break before the arrowhead would come off. Now, modern man tried to repeat this process. And after months of research, they said, we succeeded in producing a few grams of this super gluous resin. If they heat it too high, it would burst into flames. If they didn't heat it enough, it wouldn't cross-link. If they didn't keep oxygen away, it would burst into flames. The only way they were able to duplicate what men 4,000 years earlier had done during the Ice Age after the flood was by using modern electronic thermocouples. And yet these stupid, ignorant, supposed brutish people did it 4,000 years earlier with no modern technology, because mankind has always been intelligent. I'd encourage you to get that book. You can find it on Amazon.com. Brilliant, Made in the Image of God, of Man. God.
Let me say something. Today we live in an age of what's called political correctness. And they talk about racism, they talk about sexism, they talk about ageism. Now they're talking about speciesism, which means if you think that you're more important than a rat or a dog, you're committing speciesism because you think that being a human somehow is good or makes you more important. I want to talk about timeism or centuryism. A lot of people today have the idea, I don't say everybody, but a lot of people have the idea that whatever happened a little bit before their time didn't matter and was very primitive. I want to tell you something. Just because people lived in the past and just because people didn't have modern computers does not mean they were stupid. In fact, they were probably smarter because they didn't have computers to rely upon. They didn't have all of this instrumentation and machinery. Isaac Newton wrote, perhaps with a little humility, that if he had seen anything and accomplished anything, it was because he stood on the shoulders of giants. And the people of the past, operating from a much smaller population base, were able to discover and do quite a lot. And I tell you, it's not because they were stupid, it's because they were smart. And today people actually are much, as a population, less intelligent because they have means to do their thinking for them.
I'll try to briefly give a tangible example of the superior intelligence of ancient man. We have at the Creation Evidence Museum a hammerhead with a portion of the handle intact, a portion of the handle is colified. It was discovered 78 years ago in June 1936 by the Hahn family in central Texas. I took this hammer to Battelle Laboratory in Columbus, Ohio. That's the laboratory that analyzed the moonstones. We used the same laboratory, the same technician, the same instrument. The technician's name was Andy. He was the same instrument that analyzed the moonstones that were brought back by Neil Armstrong, Mike Collins, and Buzz Aldrin. Where there was a sear, where they seared it, the head of the hammer, they ran a scanning electron microscopic elemental analysis, a beam of electrons streaming down into it, see what it was made of. All of that to say this. This hammer was embedded in rock where dinosaur footprints and dinosaur bones were found. At the same time with dinosaurs, it is assigned an age evolutionarily at 140 million years. I say assigned an age. Those ages do not exist. It was simply assigned an age, assuming evolution to have occurred. The point is, we have the actual artifact made by man in the same layer with the dinosaur footprints. This helps to answer this gentleman's question as well. The elemental analysis showed from one of the world's leading laboratories, Battelle Laboratory, Columbus, Ohio, one of the world's finest physics laboratories. They found that the elemental constituents of this hammerhead is 96.6% iron, that's pretty pure iron, 0.74% sulfur, no surprise, but 2.6% chlorine. You can't compound chlorine with metallic iron. You can compound chlorine with iron dust particles, but not crystalline iron. We don't know how to do it in our laboratories. Whoever made that hammerhead was smarter than our modern physicists and ran around with dinosaurs. We're assuming, of course, that was not 140 million years ago, but that was simply before the flood. I received a call from a university in Toronto. They said, we saw a documentary on your hammerhead. And in our opinion here at the university laboratory, these were metallurgists, they said, in our opinion, this is a genuine pre-flood artifact made by people before the flood, but deposited in the flood. And I said, how do you know? I too, these men are are analytical and skeptical. We don't just believe something because grandmother believed it, even though grandmother was pretty smart. But I asked these scientists on the telephone, how do you know? How do you know it's a genuine pre-flood artifact? And they said, we've made a number of artifacts for NASA for space flight. And we can take iron. The iron that we normally see today in the atmosphere is Fe2O3 or Fe3O4. That's rust. But if we put iron under greater atmospheric pressure, slightly elevated humidity, and eliminate most of the ultraviolet radiation, FeO forms, which is transparent, and the iron continues to look like silver for a long period of time. Amazingly, where they seared this in 1936 to see what it looked like, under the crust coating, it is shiny bright like silver, and come to the Creation Evidence Museum, it's still shiny bright like silver. Those guys were smart.